Hello, and welcome to Kiss My Asparagus podcast. I'm your host, Latasha, and today I have a very special guest, Miss Adama Alaji. Adama is passionate about the liberation and wholeness of all beings. Adama speaks to the issues of resurrection, qualifying for continued existence, and true personal empowerment. Her messages reach deep into the hearts and minds and lives of all who listen. Inspirational, informational, and providing much needed life support. Adama encourages her listeners with love to consciously apply themselves to stepping wholeheartedly upon the path of light through the path of exhaustion, through purification, and consistent recommitment to the laws of existence. I'm going to welcome to the stage Miss Adama.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm well. I'm
Oh,
well. Like we discussed before we hopped on, you definitely impacted my life in a positive way. A lot of the content that I've seen has
mm,
been you articulating exactly what I've been trying to get out to people. So I had to have you on so you can, just tell us about your journey and how it all began for you.
um, at the age of 6, my pediatrician who saved my life at 4 had died from leukemia. It was my first experience with seeing a body without a spirit or a spirit that had died. And so it made me question, what is this death thing? And so it kind of set a tone for my childhood questioning, because I knew that there was something wrong in the world and I really wanted to know what it is and I wanted to do something about it. Now, nobody could talk to me about why people die and what death actually is. So I went through open heart surgery at 4, survived it, and all of the things that came with it. Got hit by a car at the age of 10. Left my parents when they were divorcing at 11, moved to Jacksonville, Florida with my grandmother, where I had the opportunity to go and visit the cemetery that was in the yard of the church. And so I saw the cross on the graveyard. I saw the name, the date, the first date, the line, and then the second date. And of course, the first date is when the spirit enters the world, or the day you're born. The last date is when the spirit exits the world or dies. And then the line constitutes the life. And so I would do the math and figure out how old people were when they passed away or whatever. And what was significant is doing a panoramic view of the cemetery in the yard of the church. In Detroit, you have to drive to the cemetery. You can't go to a cemetery by the church, they don't have it. But so this, I could walk across the street. And I realized that the crosses were on the graveyard. And so the cross began to represent for me death. And so when I looked up at the church, the cross was on the top of the church. And so I stopped going. And so it was all very symbolic with the mind of an 11-year-old. And so I have never been to church since, but I come through a line of ministers and educators and teachers and whatnot, and realize that there has to be more to life than just living, working every day for $1 and then dying. So after junior high school, University of Florida, mid 70s. At that time, there were maybe 30,000 students. Of the 30,000, 1,500 were Black. I was a psychology major. And I really wanted to have an understanding about behavior. Um, in my second year, in my junior year of the sociology courses, it was a sociology minor, the statistics were saying 20,000 Black Americans die every year from sugar diabetes. Another 15,000 are dying every year from complications from obesity. Another 12,000 dying from cancer of the lung. Another 8,000 from cancer of the pancreas. Another 6,000 from da 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 da. Then by the time you factor in our teenage pregnancies, our teenage abortions, our abortion rate, our what they call our illegitimate children, our divorce rate, our single-headed households, our juvenile delinquency, our incarceration rate. It was if to say, when you factor all of these things together, this is the evidence of your inherent inferiority to us. 30,000 students, 1,500 were Black at that time. This is a mid 70s. So this is what really got me to a point where I really started knocking and seeking. And when I asked, what's the cause and what's the cure? They said, we don't have a cause, we don't know the cure, but because of affirmative action, you're a double minority, you're both a black and female, you can get paid for doing the research. And of course, that really, and of course, we can show you how to slant your study to prove whatever it is you're hypothesizing. And then, based upon the applicability of that research to medicine, to intelligence, to science, to education, to whatever, then you can continue to get paid. And so, money was not my motivating factor for why I was going to college. I really didn't even want to go to college. I never thought that college would make me. My mother made me go, so I was there. I was there, but really coming to a point where they had no answers, and that was insufficient. There has to be an answer as to the disproportionate percentage of us who are affected by all of these things. And then I went directly to God and I asked God, show me what this is. Show me what this is. And I was remembering that at 7, I didn't want to eat the meat. At 7, I was throwing my parents' alcohol away. At 7, I was throwing their cigarettes away. Here I am, 19, going on 20. I'm smoking, I'm drinking, I'm still eating the meat. And then when I thought about whose businesses these are, I realized that those are not our businesses, that those are the businesses of those who are the ascendants or the descendants of those ones who were at some level involved with old money in America, which was sugar, tobacco, slaves, oil, right? Beef industries and whatnot. And so I made a personal economic boycott. I'm not giving you another damn dime. And I went from eating absolutely everything to having fresh fruit in the morning and huge salads in the evening. I stopped smoking. I stopped all of it. And I went from 127 pounds to 103 in less than 45 days with no additional exercise. But what I was really able to see is that I did not have to labor over my books as I was doing. I could go, I could read the chapter, I could go to class, I could hear what was being said, I could hear what was not being said, I could read between the lines, and I could form the critical questions. And I literally brought my professors to their freaking knees because you can't make sense of this. You can't take 16, 17, 18, 19 year olds from high school, put them in an adulterated situation where we've got pubs on campus, 24-hour visitation as freshmen, right? We put us in an adulterating situation and then think after 4 years of that we come out doing anything that makes sense, because there has been absolutely no real support in having a real understanding and an understanding as to what life is for us. What is the purpose of being? Why is it that nobody was asking any questions? That we're just going through this process of getting a degree, getting your education, getting further education and whatnot, and then seeing all of the educated people that we already had, and then the consistent expansion or the pandemic of more sickness, illness, and disease, and then the anticipation of more, regardless of how much education, regardless of how much money, regardless of the socioeconomics, regardless of anything, you're telling me that people are going to be dying in greater and greater numbers. But then I was able to realize that there was an initiative that was called Global 2000. And Global 2000 was an initiative that basically where these ones had gone and they were making an assessment as to the population increase. So if East Indians were having babies at the rate that they continued to have babies, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Africans throughout Africa, the Negroes in America, and the Blacks in Central and South America, if we all keep having babies at the rate that we were having babies, then the world would be overcrowded by the year 2000. So the global initiative, 2000, was to literally depopulate the planet by 3.5 billion by the year 2000. And when I realized that, at the time there were studies of how they had gone into Africa with these smallpox vaccinations, and they were using the prostitutes as their uh, experiment, right? And so they having to keep injecting these ones because their immune system was strong, so strong. They didn't come away with anything. So they would go back and re-inject. Now, I have not been familiar with smallpox being an issue in Africa, but AIDS exploded in the same proportion as those smallpox vaccinations. And so we're in a place where, or I was in a space and place where I realized that capitalism requires slaves. And to be in a place and space where everybody has been fed like kids, not nourished like children, and we had no real support through the religious indoctrination, the churches, through our educational systems, through the culture of society, that basically everybody is participating in the oppression of the people and those who are getting educated, right? With the BA degrees and the master's degrees and the PhDs and the Juris Doctors and whatnot, is that basically everybody that has gone through the educational system and getting certified, licensed, and degreed to be able to have good jobs are the ones who are literally profiting off of the degradation, the disenfranchisement, and the oppression of the populace. And so the clarity of mind that came to me as a result of the body being so consistent in its own cleansing. And this is what we were not taught. We were taught to bathe every day, to brush our teeth and bathe the outside between the legs, crack the behind. But we've never been given an initiative to cleanse internally when we live inside the body. And so when we are feeding from meat, dairy, eggs, chicken, fish, flesh, flour, as a little girl, we would take flour to school, mix it with water, it makes paste. And so that's your pancakes, your waffles, your breads, your biscuits, your pretzels, your donuts, your croissants, your scones, all of the noodles, the pastas is paste. And so now every body is filled with all of this paste because these are the things that we were taught to love. Now, when a people take over another people, they never had the people's best interests at heart. How do we know? Because if they had the people's best interests at heart, they would have left the people alone. But when you take over another people, you have to feed the people. But you didn't have the best interests of the people at heart, so you got to create something to feed the people, right? And what was that? Most of that was starches and scraps, the protein, and then the four food groups where we have to have protein, we got to have starch, and then vegetables and fruit. So we have been socialized under what I refer to as a death culture, and what we have that I refer to as the corporate deities of death, where so many are employed in the meat industry, the tobacco industry, the alcohol industry, the sugar industry, and all of the other things that spin off of those things in terms of all of the snacks and all of the things that are marketed to us that we have so much access to, but they provide us no oxygenation, they provide us no hydration, they provide us no mineralization, no alkalization. They do not facilitate cellular repair, regeneration, rejuvenation, or consciousness expansion. And so here we have a pandemic of sickness, illness, and disease from AIDS to zits, and nobody is really telling us to boycott the death industries, to stop feeding ourselves and our children that which has no substance. And so as a result of this capitalism profit-wreaking initiative, we as a populace, and this is a global initiative, but for our intensive purposes here in the United States, where you have robbed the people of the wealth of themselves by giving them all of this stuff from the time they come out the womb, then you've actually created what we see, where we no longer are a dynamic and creative people. We have the most incarcerated people on the planet. We have some of the sickest. Obesity is at an all-time high. We have more women who are having their breasts cut off. Now men are getting breast cancer. We have so many ones who are having their wombs cut out by the time they're 38, 39, 40 years of age. You understand the endometriosis, the uterine cancer, the cervical cancer, the ovarian cancer. And I'm just saying, is that no, this is death culture. And so all of where I have been in terms of the realizations, the revelations, epiphanies, over 47 years of consistency of no meat, dairy, eggs, chicken, fish, flesh, flour, right? And then giving up the breads, the rice, the potatoes, the beans, the peas, and whatnot over 20 years. I realized that food is the tool of our oppression, and we never had to have it. It's not an essential. And so we do not understand that just changing the diet is not enough because we still have years of accumulation, years of mucus holding and binding the nitrates, nitrites, BHA, BHT that were in our breakfast cereals, the artificial colors, artificial flavors, shelf stabilizers, pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics, larvicides. Larvicides are the chemicals that they spray the animals' food down with in the slaughterhouses and the feedlots so that their feces do not draw flies. And putting all of that feces into the waters and streams is 90% of all of the global warming. But we're not addressing it. We're not responding correctly and directly to being warred against. We have been taught that God has given us the free will, and it's a free will to be enslaved to whatever appetite, passion, desire, lust that we care to cultivate within ourselves, that we have the right to be wrong because our nature as human beings is sinful. To be human is to be fallible, to not expect that there's anything perfect. So nobody's perfect. So you don't even strive for perfection. Jesus was the only perfect one, and beyond Muhammad, no one else is coming. And so all of this is what has influenced me to consciously care, to inspire, and to speak to the responsibility that we have in realizing that purpose in being is to ensure the continuation, the perpetuation of our lineages, that every intelligence perpetuates itself. The cats do it, the rats do it, the squirrels do it, everything perpetuates itself. It exalts full effort in its living. It does nothing to undermine itself. It knows its food, it excretes its waste, it knows its kind, and it will respond correctly when it senses that its life is being threatened. Now, every order of being does that except for the people. We feel entitled to do the things that undermine the integrity of ourselves. So I'm exalting and advocating that life itself is the greatest gift. Life itself is the greatest wealth. Life itself is the greatest blessing. Everybody has it. We are all animated by the same forces. We're dwelling in an absolute and supreme intelligence that we refer to as God, that I refer to as the intelligence of existence on a planet that is 80% water, that for all intensive purposes is a biospheric intergalactic spaceship spinning in eternity. We're in a cosmic journeying. And these bodies are our spacesuits, perfectly and divinely designed, and we're not designed for any of the things that we've been taught to eat. And then when it comes down to people asking, or, well, how are you going to get your protein? And you can't live without B12 and all of these things. And I'm saying, you all are not eating for optimum cellular functioning. Your reason for eating has nothing to do with nutrition. You're addicted to this stuff because it's addictive. The sugar is addictive. The chemicals are addictive because we're being warred against. And so I'm saying that the initiative to depopulate, to have zero population is what we're dealing with. And that we cannot continue to participate with our own demise and then be respected as intelligent people or feel as though your life is supposed to end in death when we don't see the evidence of death anywhere in the air. The only animals you see dead are the ones that get hit by cars or the ones that get shot, the deer and those who hunt and whatnot. But you really see life, and we see life abundantly everywhere. And we see the cycles and the seasons that we can depend upon here. And then in other places, they've got rainy season, they've got dry seasons, they've got, you understand, and people are oriented from the place where they live upon a planet. But wherever we are upon the planet itself is in flotation and rotation in nothing but an ocean of cosmic consciousness. And we have been gifted so much of it in the capacity that we have for seeing, for imaging, for speaking, for thinking, for contemplating, for meditating, for being in a place and space where that which we see, that which we image in our minds can be manifested and given shape to. Everything that we see is the evidence of somebody's imagination. But to be in a system of oppression and a global reality of wars and wars and bombs and bombs, why is this the greatest thing that these ones can think to create? It's sickening. It's completely unacceptable. And we are having to come to a point where we're clear that we have the right to our lives, and we have the right to live our lives in the light of the supreme intelligence that is beating our hearts, breathing us, and has gifted us to the planet to literally ensure the continuation, the exaltation, and the progression of our lineages. And we, as women, we never had to be licensed, certified, and degreed to be women. We did have to be licensed, educated, certified, and degreed to be nutritionists and doctors and lawyers and surgeons and wardens and all of the ones who are maintaining a system of oppression, because we could not think a greater thought, because we're still eating meat, dairy, eggs, chicken, fish, flesh, flour, sugar, alcohol, tobacco, smoking. And we think that our good jobs and our good paychecks and our gated communities and our nice cars is the evidence of our success. And I'm saying, no, success in truth is being able to get out of this experience without having died, particularly without having killed oneself.
Hmm. Now, you said that detoxification is not just a physical process, but a spiritual unburdening. What are we really letting go of when we cleanse the body? Can you talk about that a little?
Well, the body is cleansing daily. We have just not been supporting it. So we bathe daily, we brush our teeth, we're refreshed. All right. But as a result of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of accumulation of the rot of pigs and cows and turkeys and chicken and alcohol and tobacco and sugar and whatnot, phasing off of that, the body moves into cleanse mode by itself. We have issues when we don't know to facilitate the cleansing by sweating the toxins out, saunas, steams, detox bath, as well as utilizing that which is necessary, that we refer to as enemas and colon cleansing daily to facilitate emptying the bowel. And so many people are not having an understanding that the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of the standard American diet is the foundation of all cancer. But what is really noticeable is that it's chronic constipation, congestion. And so getting off of all of that and beginning to really breathe deeply, really coming to a point of mindfulness about where we actually are in the presence of divinity, and to really understand that divinity is all there is. We've been taught to disrespect it. We've been taught to deny the perfection of our own being. So the cleansing and the detoxification has to start with the remembering of the divinity, the sanctity, and the sacredness of our lives, and the divinity of what it is to be a spirit that dwells in the body. And so the detoxification process is going to start anyway, just eliminating all of those things. And then we're adding fresh fruit that has the water and the fiber as our first meal. We're also doing the clays. Now, when many of us were children, we had a craving for chalk, cornstarch, argo starch, dirt, ice, and didn't know what it was. And when I speak to people, many ones, particularly in the South, those who came up in Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, and whatnot, they have a recollection of that. Our DNA was kicking in because the clay is the natural detoxifier for the nitrates, nitrites, BHA, BHT, anything that is inorganic, viral, bacterial, organismic in the body. All right. So we're bringing that into the system. We're drinking it. I shave it, bake it, powder it, blend it with a bentonite, right? So that it goes through the system and it begins to pull and loosen. Now, when we are realizing that the earth is 80% water, our bodies should be 80% water. Our nutritional requirements should be coming from 80% water based things. That's our herbal teas, our fresh fruit, our vegetation. But we have not really understood that all of the pain, the heartache, the frustration, whether however we grew up, if we grew up with parents that we saw beat each other up, that they were drug addicts and they were cigarette smokers and alcohol drinkers and they didn't get along and whatnot, or we were whipped or we were cursed at or we were molested and whatnot, all of these emotions have charged themselves upon the waters of our cells. We hold it. And the more we regurgitate it, the more we think about it. You understand? The more infused it is. So when we have 60-year-old women who were violated as children, who continue to regurgitate that story, we continue to infuse ourselves with the frequency of the energy of that. And so I'm advocating that liberation has to happen at the cellular level. So that is what we're actually facilitating, is cellular cleansing from all of the physical stuff, the chemical stuff, the viral, the bacterial, but also the emotional things that have been charged. And I give affirmations so that we are really reprogramming. We've heard all of our lives, thou shalt love thy mother, father, creator, God, thy Lord, with thy whole body, heart, mind, with all of your might. You've heard that, right? You've heard that, right? We've also heard
Yes.
that thou shalt love thy neighbors as you love yourself. But if you're not loving yourself, you can't really love anybody else. You can't really love God if you don't respect that the gift that you are of God, because nobody can give you anything greater than who and what you already are. And we were told to honor our parents. And I'm saying, I'm taking it to another level, that we are here to bring honor to the lineages through whom we've come, right? But having a directive, having something that gives us an idea of how we should have aspirations towards becoming greater than the ones to whom we've come. Each generation should become more dynamic than the previous one. But under genocide, each generation has been assaulted with more and more artificial colors, artificial flavors, all of this garbage. And now we have hospitals that are just children's hospitals. I mean, that's been happening, but now they're bigger. It's more. And so just coming to the point and place where we are opening up the channels of elimination. Many of us remember this red hot water bottle bag hanging on the back of our grandmother's or our mother's bathroom doors, right? The enema bag or the dish bag. So we're doing the enemas because when your bowels move, you are not necessarily getting everything out. All right. Now, drinking the clay, giving up the meat, the dairy, the eggs, the chicken, the fish, right? Your body's in cleanse mode. All right. So, what's happening is that now the body is loosening up. Artificial colors, artificial flavors, nitrates, nitrites, BHA, it's loosening up, but it's not going, it's reabsorbing in the bloodstream or the tissues if we do nothing to open up the channels of elimination so that which is being loosened up daily can get out daily. And so those ones who are overweight and they've been overweight all of their lives is because that what we've been taught to eat is not fueling our systems. So now we're having to really make a discernment about what is actually fuel for our bodies and our cells, as opposed to What is food? Food is a tool of oppression. What
Yeah.
we know as food has been oppressive, and it is the foundation of all sickness, illness, disease. Now, what we did not anticipate and realize that all intelligent beings, from the ant to the whale, will respond when it senses that its life is being threatened. All animals except for those who are being raised for human consumption. The chicken is not able to defend or protect itself. The pigs are not able to defend and protect themselves. The cows are not able to defend and protect themselves. They live their entire lives in frustration, anguish, captivity. All of that pain and anguish and frustration is charged upon their flesh, right? In addition to the larvicides, the antibiotics, the pesticides, all of that, then we're receiving all of that into our bodies when we've eaten that for years. But then what we did not anticipate is how the etheric energy of the emotional trauma of these sentient beings affects us. And now we have more psychosis, we have more depression, we have more manic depressive, we have more bipolarism, we've got more schizophrenia, we've got more mental illness without even making the connection between the condition of the animals that you've consumed and how the etheric energy is now charged upon the blood. Now, many ones will understand that one, we can agree that thou shalt not kill is something that we've always heard, right? Thou shalt not kill. So if thou shalt not kill, then thou shalt not eat of the flesh of that which has been killed. There's law. What you do unto others will be done unto you. So here we are with all of this pandemic of sickness, illness, and disease that's related directly to the fact that our blood bears the violation of violated beings. And being good is not good enough for where we are in this dispensation. The ministers, the teachers, the surgeons, everybody is eating flesh and alcohol and tobacco and sugar and all of these things. So it's a sick system. So
Yeah.
we don't even call it white supremacy. There's no supremacy in being stupid. And why do we call it stupidity? Because you know you're wrong and you don't care to be right. You understand? You feel entitled that God has gifted someone's the authority to determine who has the right to live or not. And I'm saying everyone that has been given life has the right to their lives. And even those ones that have been hybridized are still intelligent creatures because these people cannot create from anything other than what was already there. So we're dealing with the hybridization over time of the Asian fowl that became the chicken, or the the auroch or whatever that has become the cow after generations of
The
genetic manipulation.
natural.
We don't find these animals naturally in existence anywhere.
Mhm.
You understand? And I'm in Georgia. And in Georgia, there's a lot of trees. There's still a lot of forests, even for as much uh, as they are building and creating condos and all of that. You see squirrel, you see possum, you see armadillo, you see turkey buzzards. You understand, there are a lot of animals that would be naturally in our environment, but with the Western expansion that happened when Columbus came, there were no cows and horses on the Western Hemisphere. They brought those things here. And everywhere that they set up cattle ranches, they set up the cross and they set up saloons and they set up prostitution. And we didn't have a connection. But how is it that you can have a constitution that says that all men are created equal, but then have slaves that you did not honor? You didn't support them. We had no rights that they had the responsibility to respect. and then to change or modify the Constitution with the 13th Amendment to say that slavery is hereby abolished except for where you have been convicted of a crime. It doesn't say where you have been found to be really guilty of the crime, but you've been convicted. And so there's a lot of conviction on those who are not guilty, but who have been under the auspices of those who are criminal and criminally insane at that. To think that there's some benefit and some blessedness and prosperity that you have being a detriment to everything and everybody everywhere. How can you even think that you can survive it? You understand? And so that's where we get a chance through our clearing, our cleansing, our purification, and the consecration. So the consecration is where we're taking responsibility to infuse the waters of ourselves as we're reconstituting the body to be 80% highly charged mineralized water with our herbal teas, with our fresh fruit, with our vegetation, with our seaweeds, our sea moss, our bladderwrack, and all of those things that are providing us the phytonutrients and whatnot, so that we are literally being nourished for the first time.
You've spoken about Dr. Sebi on one of your interviews. I just wanted to know what your, interaction or your experience was with him when he was alive.
I love Sebi. Sebi, I had personal moments with Kelly also, who was selling some of his products here. But Sebi, I interviewed him a few times. I spent some time with him, and could just call him up. He was just very, very funny, and I just realized that the realizations, the revelations, epiphanies, we have been blessed with so many ones who have come through that we benefit from. So I already had a strict vegetarian restaurant. I think my initial experience with Sebi was in the late 80s, when one of my sister friend's daughter had gone blind, and she was at one of the children's hospitals, and they wanted to do a spinal tap and this and that. And one of my other sisters was from New York, so she had been around Sebi and Ma'ah when she was pregnant with her daughter. So we called Sebi. Sebi sent herbs and whatnot, and within a week or so, the blindness was restored. And and so that was my first experience with him. And then after I established my restaurant in Little Five Points here in Atlanta, then that's when I actually met him and was able to take him some food and spend some time with him after one of his lectures and whatnot. And so I've been on those products. I know the efficacy of those herbs. The issue that I have had is that because of the explosion of issues that we have from meat, dairy, eggs, chicken, and fish, it has to be affordable. You understand? We can't be in a place and space where the only way you can get what you need is when you get your income tax return. Mm-hmm. You understand? And I always tell Sebi, Sebi, let me be your poster child. Let me, because I've always known myself. I've always known myself. And but a lot of other ones are not necessarily in the mindset of consciously caring to empower others. And this is one of the reasons why I do what I do, because I've been out here for so long and I've met so many. And I know that that is not necessarily what other ones are consciously trying to do. And that's why I make that what I am consciously caring to do, is to empower us, to inspire us, to get us to a point and place where we realize how phenomenal this gift and this blessing of life actually is. You understand? Because when you are steeped in a sea of filth internally, it's hard to really be faith-filled. It's hard to be optimistic. It's hard to realize how blessed you are when you're racked in pain. It's hard to be in a place where you're remembering how favored you are and how covered you are when you've been beaten and raped and violated and molested. You understand? But it started from the violation that's been charged upon our blood. And nobody's really speaking to it from the perspective of the perspective of how do we respond to
Yeah.
this initiative that's intended to have us in a place where we have no leverage.
Yeah.
We've been herded like cash cows in multi-trillion-dollar industry of sickness, illness, disease, suffering, pain, pharmacology, butchery, surgeries, hysterectomies. You understand? I'm just saying we don't have to participate with it. Let's stop.
Yeah.
And so we cleanse. We cleanse and we get greater clarity. The clarity of mind comes with the cleansing of the blood. The clarity of mind comes with the cleansing of the blood. The spirit is charged upon the blood. The blood is perusing through 100,000 miles of blood vessels, capillaries, veins, and arteries. So the cleaner the blood, the greater the clarity. But we're
Yeah.
not going to get clean blood from dead things.
No, not at all. And I hear a lot of people mentioning, oh, you got to eat for your blood type. It doesn't matter your blood type. If you're eating clean and your blood is clean, you're clean and you're going to be healthy. It doesn't matter what your blood type is. You just need to get rid of all of the crap from your diet,
Right.
including dead
Right.
animals.
Do you consider the blood type of the cow? Do you consider the blood of the pig? Do you consider any of the animals that you're consuming and how that shifts or changes or pollutes or defiles or changes the blood? You understand? I'm just saying is that the issue is that we haven't understood that most people are not clean. We can try to eat clean, but I'm really advocating to realize that those nitrates, nitrites, BHA, they're not intended to get out of the system. And they're bound in years of accumulation of mucus, which is what was the primary issue in terms of our cellular response to the rolling out of the 5G towers and wireless technologies that put our cells in a position of cleansing. And then so many ones had so much congestion and mucus that had hardened in their lungs, their bronchioles, their sinuses, so that when the body starts cleansing, we didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Because nobody said, oh, start really cleansing. There was a thing about elderberries and vitamin C, but that is not enough to get years of mucus that has solidified in the eyes that becomes glaucoma and cataracts, in the ears that becomes deafness, in the joints with the chemicals, the uric acid from the meats, the lactic acid from the dairy, the carbonic acid from the starches, that's literally deteriorating the soft cartilage and connective tissue within the shoulders and the knees and the hips and whatnot, which is why so many ones are having hip replacement surgeries and knee replacement surgeries and having to fuse their vertebrae together.
Yep. In their 50s. Like, so the womb is a central force in your teachings. How does what we influence womb health and generational healing?
Well, the issue for us is realizing the violation that has been charged within ourselves in our consuming the aborted fetuses of chickens and the pus and mucus of cows. Now, many ones are not necessarily familiar with the dairy farming and whatnot, that the cows are shot up with so much BGH hormones to make them produce over 3.5 tons of milk in their life cycle. But they really never had a proper courtship. They were artificially inseminated on what's called a rape rack, where the bulls are given progesterone, testosterone, and other things to make them want to breed, and they put them in a pen. But they have castrated bulls, and they've injected these bulls with so much of that, which puts them in a place where they want to breed. And they're breeding bulls with castrated bulls, and they have what's called a sac and a catcher, right? Somebody on the other end. So they have a sac on the penis of, and they catch the sperm of the bull, and they put it in little vials, and they ship it across the country, UPS. And this is what they put in guns to impregnate cows on what's called a rape rack. And so it's like you're shooting, have somebody putting your arm up the backside of a cow and shooting the sperm into them, and then they conceive, right? And this is how this is going. They conceive, but then as soon as the calf is born, they take the calf from the mother, put it in a pen. The calf never has the opportunity to nurse. And then the cow is connected to milking machines, right? And given enough BGH hormones to make her be able to produce 3.5 tons of milk in her life cycle. And then these dead cows are given to McDonald's and Burger King and all of this. And this is what our baby boys have been eating over the last 30 years, 40 years of this. And we've not ever looked at where so much of the gender issues and homosexuality and all of that is coming from, in terms of us being affected by the chemicals and the hormones that our eggs continue to carry. So my mother's generation, Dr. King's generation, Mrs. King's generation was the experimental for the birth control pills. So when many of us went to school, we went with birth control pills. Now, many of us didn't take ours. All right. Other ones took theirs, and they took them for years while they pursued their academic and their career objectives. And then when they had children, their eggs were so over estrogenized that if you had a male child, that male child had inherited so much extra female estrogens. And so we have the example of that in having brothers who are so effeminate and thinking that it's a choice. But no, it's the chemical composition. It's what
they were born that way, and it was just God's doing. And it's a touchy subject for.
But we having to realize that when you eat eggs, you're getting all these female hormones. When you get chicken, you're eating female hormones. When you get cows, you're eating female hormones. When you're drinking milk, you're getting female hormones. When you're doing the Burger King, and all female hormones. Most of the animals that the people are eating are females. And the chicken are being shot up with hormones that's coming from horses, which makes them from egg to slaughter in 6 weeks, but they do not have a use for the male chicks. And so they suffocate them, grind them up, powder them, and then feed them back to the chickens.
And in addition to the metabolic issues, like these are fine grains. And I mean, when we think about hormones in general, like insulin is a hormone, and people don't realize that it's a domino effect. Like you tip the balance of one hormone in your body, it's liable to just disrupt the whole system in a way that, the only way you can correct it is to eliminate those foods and detox.
Exactly. And the accumulation and the recoagulation of those proteins coming from eggs and milk and dairy and whatnot are now in the womb with the mucus and binding these chemicals. Now, very few people really talk about their sexual activity. All right. And so the issue for us is realizing, one, that the whole being is sacred. You understand? We came into this existence through the sacred fluid of our mother's womb, sparked by the sacred fluid of our fathers. But then we got absolutely no support in respecting the sacredness and the divinity of being, of all being. Right. And so we're basically just being genetically modified and manipulated. You understand? It's like we're the great science experiment. OK, but the issue is that nobody can create from anything other than the intelligence that was already there. And we're having to accept it. But the fibroids and the all of the tumors and the cysts is the evidence of how the body is trying to isolate these chemicals, these toxins, and all of this, and tuck them over here and tuck them over there. And so they're not reabsorbing in the tissues, but they do not, I'll put it this way. The earth is more powerful than the chemicals. We're on a planet that is 80% water. This clay is coming from deep within the earth. It is more powerful than the chemicals. So when we drink it and we douche with it, it helps to pull and loosen all of this stuff, because what? The body is intelligent. It's trying to cleanse anyway. So we're just facilitating that process. But But when we are being told we have to have mammograms, we have to have colonoscopies, we have to have regular pap smears, we have to have all of this stuff, but nobody ever asks you what you eat.
It's the maintenance of what you eat. They want to make sure they check so where they can go and perform some surgery so they can capitalize on your sickness. Like, so let's keep tabs on your sickness, because we know you're going to progress. We're not going to tell you how to eat to
Right.
avoid these issues. We're just going to keep tabs on it until it grows to the point where we can capitalize.
Right. And so it's like, well, how do you get to fourth stage cancer when you have been regularly dealing with the doctors? Or
We just
how
don't
is
watch it.
right? Or how is it that you have first what they call first stage cancer in the breast, and then they want to do a whole mastectomy on both breasts? And I'm just saying is that this is butchery. This is
Yeah.
crazy. This is insanity. But we are in a place and space where we have the opportunity to clear, cleanse, and consecrate our bodies. But it's not a 10-day thing. It's not a 60-day thing. It's not, oh, well, I did a 40-day fast and I did the mucus, I did the master cleanse and I did the salt flush and I lost 12 pounds or I lost 50 pounds and whatnot. And I'm saying, well, what's up? Where are you now? And still be 150 pounds overweight. Still not knowing how to eat. And so I'm saying don't fast for any length of time until you get to a point where you master hydrating, oxygenating, and opening up the channels of elimination and knowing what to eat. Master eating that which is water based. We say, oh, well, we're plant based. And I'm saying we are water based beings. Water is the medium of intelligence that holds frequency and vibration. It is programmable. Right? So when people tell me, well, I live in a certain place where we're not getting real fruit anymore, it doesn't have seed, right? And I'm saying, but the issue is this: they could not create from anything other than the intelligence that was already there. They can modify it, but they can't really take the intelligence out of it. They can
So
take the
how do you
they couldn't take the fiber out of it. You understand? So the water and the fiber are still with it. And it's still going to be better than having eggs and cheese and oatmeal and wheat and all of this clogging, congesting stuff, to have that which is water and fiber. But to be able to speak to it. See, this is the issue. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Can you speak? Yes, you can. Can you acknowledge that there is nothing but absolute and supreme intelligence, and that there is intelligence that is in the water, and that the water is programmable, and you can sit where we learn to say grace over our pork chops and macaroni and cheese and and all of this, right? It's like there is no way that your prayers could be that powerful, right? To eliminate the consequences of feeding off the carcass of a dead animal and all of this stuff that has created all of this cancer. If our prayers were that powerful, then there would be no disease. All right. But the issue is that when we're dealing with water, when we're dealing with water-based things, we can acknowledge the intelligence that's in the water, and we can program the intelligence that is in the water. We can invoke and call forth the original blueprint of what this is. I call forth your original blueprint, and I invoke the light of the supreme intelligence that is in this to harmonize with the intelligence that is in every fiber, every cell of my being. You understand? We have more power than we realize, but that's the whole point in being fed garbage, so that you are not able to exalt the fullness of the intelligence, your favor, your gift, your greatness, and whatnot, when you are dealing with a people who are so freaking insecure that they would rather anesthetize us, inebriate us, intoxicate us, violate us, subdue us, subjugate us, incarcerate us, and whatnot, indoctrinate us, miseducate us to make themselves seem like they're superior.
So, what do you see as a spiritual consequence of consuming those types of foods and those energies? Because I hear you speak of those who assume that they're supreme or superior, but I did hear you speak on that a little bit about, what their diet consists of and what our original diet consists of. Can you
Right.
speak about that a little bit?
So when the blood is defiled with the violation of violated beings. It gives you a tendency towards more violence, right? And this is one of the reasons why the football players and the athletes and the soldiers and the military are really fed a lot of meat, because it makes you aggressive, right? The other aspect of it is that it's not just the meat. So by the time you do the meat and then you do the alcohol and the tobacco, right? Then you've got a cocktail going on, because the meat is not only the flesh of the dead animal that has to rot, it is the nitrates and the nitrites, the chemicals, the preservatives, the antibiotics or hormones that are also contained in the meat. We never think about the contraindication of the chemicals that are there. But to be in a place where you are being supported in thinking that to be a man, you have to be aggressive. To be a man, you must be toxic. You must smoke. You must drink. You must be in a place where you cannot be controlled. Can't no woman control a man. You understand? And so we were brought up to think that a man is going to be a man, and you just going to have to deal with his wayward ways. And you understand that they drank and they smoked and this and that. And I can guarantee you that there have been very few, if any, who were raped and violated, who were not raped and violated by those who had toxic blood filled with the rot of dead animals, the alcohol and tobacco that puts you in a place where your spirit is now in such distortion. You're still this point of the presence of this absolute and supreme intelligence, but your blood has been contaminated, which is the foundation of our oppression. This is what makes us trappable and incarceratable. You understand? This is what sets us up to be in a place and space where we are uncontrollable. This alcohol makes you crazy. You understand? Then by the time you put the cigarettes to it, the tobacco with it, and then the meat, and then the chemicals and any other drugs of choice that people are dealing with, it does create such toxic blood that creates a violation of the spirit. Now the spirit is distorted. The spirit is toxic. The spirit is violating. The spirit is no longer in the integrity of its divinity. The spirit can only be changed with the changing of the bloodstream. And this is what the overall objective of our dietary changes and the consecration of purification is, so that we are remembering that we are already in eternity, that the planet is literally spinning in eternity. We have come from another realm of eternity into this realm of physicality, corporality, temporality. But you understand? But this is a temporary thing. But we are still in the realm of eternity. We must now acknowledge the divinity of being, which is what we were taught to desecrate and defile. And so when we heard coming up that salvation comes through the blood of Christ, it is literally creating a bloodstream that bears no violation of violated beings, none of the nitrates, nitrites, BHA, BHT, pesticide, herbicide, antibiotic, tobacco residues, alcohol residues, and whatever. So, but depending on where you are in your process, when you start, when you change the diet, how long were you smoking and drinking before you stopped? People will say, well, I've been clean from alcohol for 6 years, but they drank for 25 years. And so I'm saying you haven't been cleaned yet. Those chemicals are still in the system. And I've heard and know that when people do water fasting and they were addicted to drugs, alcohol, tobacco, meth, any other drugs, heroin, cocaine, crack, and whatnot, those chemicals begin to flood the bloodstream. And if we do nothing to open up the elimination so that these toxins can get out, then you're just reabsorbing and repoisoning the body. I've heard people die from doing extensive water fasts because nobody ever really guided them in knowing that whatever was already there is going to be loosened up, and it's going to begin to be present again. So this is why our understanding that the body's cleansing daily. So we're applying a protocol for daily internal cleansing, opening up the bowel, doing the enemas, still trying to have bowel movement. So the heavier you are, the heavier you are, the more weight you are carrying, the more waste is being retained. Right? So even if the bowels are moving 2 to 3, 4 times a day, but you're still 100 pounds overweight, 200 pounds overweight, then we want those bowels to be moving 3 or 4 times as much. Or we're doing the enemas 2 or 3 times a day, depending on what the schedule is, what the diagnosis has been, what the prognosis has been, what the issues actually are, which is why I talk to people as opposed to having a website where you just buy product.
So I do have all your information down on the ticker. So people can contact you through email, phone. They can check you out on your radio show, etc. So some of your protocols, I know you have the clay. What are some other ways people detox with you and you're consulting with them?
The mucus buster. All right.
Okay.
I have a formula that is fresh horseradish root, ginger root, garlic, cayenne pepper, lime, lemon, grapefruit juice, pure maple syrup. All right. For those who want to really understand how much mucus there is in the system, you start busting up that mucus. The mucus is binding and holding the chemicals. So this is why it's you can't just take herbs, you can't just drink clay, you can't just do enemas. You got to do it all. You got to bust up that mucus, right? And so how do you know it's working? Because you're going to feel achy. The mucus is going to start draining. The sinuses are going to start draining. You understand? You'll be blowing your nose. You'll be sneezing. And mucus is the foundation of most of the issues. You understand? Because what people would refer to as allergies. And I'm saying, no, that's mucus. You have these triggers, whether it's the animal dander, or whether it's the pollen or whatever, you've got triggers that are triggering the loosening of the mucus, and you start sneezing and your eyes start watering. That's because of how much mucus is in the body. So we want to bust up the mucus. People who just have, most of us have some of this stuff already available to us. Taking a tablespoon of cayenne with a tablespoon of honey and some lemon juice and dropping it down the throat and doing that every day. You understand? Adding more water, doing that with your herbal teas. You understand? Bust up the mucus. All right. I found that the formula that I have is really superior to doing any one of those things when you're bringing them all together. Because what we are interested in is creating the most expeditious cellular clearing, cleansing, liberation, and consciousness expansion possible in the least amount of time for the least amount of money. We don't want this to be dragging out for years, even though, you understand, you want to be in a place where you are able to reverse whatever the issues that have crystallized in the tissues, whatever they may call it. You understand what I'm saying? Basically, what we're dealing with is just severe misdiagnosis because nobody is telling you your body needs cleansing. They're not telling you your body needs nourishing, period.
Polycystic ovarian syndrome was my diagnosis and is what put me on this journey. And I've gained a lot of knowledge, in the process. And going to Western medicine, no solutions at all, other than, maintaining, maybe taking progesterone and, these synthetic options like birth control. But I have found since I've, changed my diet and started detoxing, I think I'm going to, start doing another detox for soon. I haven't tried clay before, so I'm definitely going to try that. And, I'm definitely interested in your protocols as well. And for the audience, to be able to reach out to you and get healthy as well. So.
Absolutely. And see, the health, we have to redefine what health actually is now. You understand? Because people say, "Oh, well, I just want to I want to stay healthy." I said, "But you're not healthy. We don't really know healthy. You cannot be healthy on a standard American diet. I don't care how good you look and how fit you are. You cannot be healthy on a standard American diet. It's literally impossible. How do we know? because we have all of these people who are in the gym, they working out, and they still eating aborted fetus. You understand? They still eating all this protein. And this becomes cancerous. And we don't really get it. You understand? And I'm just saying is that we see that they are expecting to find it because they know that it creates it. That's why they're telling you to get the mammograms. That's why they're telling you to have the pap smears. That's why they're telling you to have the colonoscopies, because they are looking for it. They expect it to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you and then when you're older, when you're in your 60s and 70s and you're not on any of that, and your blood pressure isn't high and this and that, and you go to them and the first thing they want to do is put you on something. Well, because of your age, and we need to make sure. And I'm just saying is that we are in a place and space where we are in one of the most dynamic periods of existence. Why? Because the children of God are rising. Now, if you cannot accept that that is who you are, then you will miss yourself. If you cannot accept that that is what you are, then you will miss yourself. If you feel entitled to kill yourself, then you will soon be dead. The issue is in the realm of eternity, how long will you be dead? You understand? And I'm just saying is that life is a gift, and life itself is beginningless, endless, infinite, and eternal. Life itself is consistently, continually redoing, remaking. You understand? Nobody can outlive life. You can't outthink it or the intelligence or the source of it. You can't outplan it, outplot it, outlove it. You can't. You might as well just harmonize with it, so that you have leverage over those who care to see you dead, and then be profiting off of you in the whole process of creating and managing sickness, illness, and disease as popular and common activity, collective learning and education, and the path of prosperity. And those of us who are on this North American continent, those of us who've got mixed DNA from our indigenous, our native, our Anglo-Saxon, and other ones, no, we have the responsibility to raise completely up on behalf of the entire planet. You understand? We have the responsibility based upon all of the blood that has been spilled upon this continent, but all of the blood that has been spilled across the planet. We have the responsibility to honor our lineages and to invoke and call forth the greatness of our lineages to really activate. And this is what we want to do through the liberation at the cellular level, the cleansing of the blood, creating the consciousness of one who knows the divinity and the truth of itself, and the responsibility, duty, and obligation to the lineages through whom we've come to represent them as the emergence of the queendoms and kingdoms of God. You understand? And this is why, when after 25 years of doing radio, and even before this 25th year, after 10, 12, 14 years, people would say, and they would call me queen, or they would call me priestess, or they would call me, and I'm saying Adama actually means queen. It means spirit earth mother. All right. You don't really have to give me a title, but if you want to give me a title, then refer to me as the Heraldess. The Heraldess means that I am heralding the eternal order. I am reminding us that we are already in eternity and we are already immortal. But by the time you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 years of death charged upon your blood, then the sickness, the illness, the disease, but then it's hard to be faith-filled, to be able to believe that you can be healed. You understand? So when I'm talking to people and I'm saying, well, how long have you been on high blood pressure meds? And they say 14, 15 years. And I'm saying, but you know that that's what's causing the kidney damage and the dialysis and all of that. Why are you still on it? Why did you not ask for a solution? We did not have the faith and the trust in that which is our creator to realize that we could be clean, we could be healed. But the healing requires the cleansing, the facilitation of opening up the channels of elimination, because the body's cleansing anyway. We are just facilitating the process. We want to be in a place where we're no nonsense, no compromise, that we will consciously care to walk the face of this earth as some of the most dynamic spirits on behalf of the lineages through whom we've come, on behalf of those that we didn't allow to come, on behalf of those who've come with us, come through us, and those who've yet to come. We have duty and obligation to life itself and the commitment to life. It seems like because everybody has it, that it would be the easiest thing to be committed to living. But everybody has it, but everybody has not made commitments to it. And so this is what is required. It's not just about being vegan and vegetarian. We're not vegans and vegetarians. We are intelligences of existence. Men, the progenitor of lineages, and wombed men, the perpetuator of lineages. We are the personification of intelligence and deity. And we have to regain our footing upon the path of everlasting life. We have to regain our footing in terms of what the prodigal children returning home into the house of God, the mind of God, through creating the blood of Christ, creating the temple of God, through the clearing, the purification. The consecration comes with the praying without ceasing, the acknowledgement of God, the acknowledgement of care, the counting your blessings, the conscious acceptance of being blessed, realizing that we were told to ask and it would be given, to knock and the door would be open, to seek and we would find. There was no way for me to be where I am as voice on behalf of our liberation had I not asked for that. You understand? Things don't just give to you. People are not trying to serve you your greatness. You understand? People are not trying to put you in a place where you feel that you have the responsibility to walk in the authority of your own authenticity as this point of the presence of this absolute and supreme intelligence. That is not what we get in death culture. That's not what we get in America, or by virtue of this corporate entity called America, where they feel entitled to marginalize, anesthetize, inebriate, intoxicate, stupefy, and whatnot, to put us in a place where we have become profitable for Coca-Cola, Burger King, McDonald's, and all of these other ones that are serving us garbage. So we're clearing, cleansing, consecrating. We're praying without ceasing. We're learning to love this absolute and supreme intelligence with our whole body, heart, mind, with all of our might. We are repenting from our sinfulness, our violation against ourselves, our violations against other ones. I had a prison ministry for several years at the United States Penitentiary here in Atlanta, right? And this was when it was, really all of your prisoners of war and those ones. This is the same prison that Marcus Garvey was imprisoned at, and so I was there with the invitation of the Moors. And I would circle with these brothers, and some of them were serving some serious time. And I asked them, when you were little boys, what did you aspire towards? And as a man, what did you think? What did you want? And basically all of them wanted to have a ton of money. They wanted to have the women. They wanted the guns. They were cowboys and Indians. They were watching The Godfather. You understand? We were shaped by the programming. You understand? And so I remember being a child in Detroit during the riots, right? And this is 1968 when Dr. King was killed. And Detroit was on fire. There were military tanks rolling down my street. People were being arrested for the looting and whatnot. You understand? And this was indelibly imprinted. But then we also had Vietnam going on. And my mother ministered to young men, right? But then when we would go to Kresge's with the five and dime store and whatnot, they had the military tanks. They had the GI Joes. They had the guns and the holsters. And you understand? So we have to deal with the difference between how we were programmed and socialized as little girls with easy bake ovens and doll babies and carpet sweepers and brooms and whatnot, while the boys were being socialized towards militarism, guns and tanks and Tonka trucks and all of this. And the boys that played with us, played house with us and held the babies and kissed us goodbye and were going to work, you know what I'm saying? They called those boys sissies. You understand? So the disparity between our being raised to keep house and have children, and the boys being raised to go have fun and do whatever the hell they want to do. You understand? So that now we're in a place where it's very difficult to really understand how to be in courtship, how to really cultivate marriages that are really the core of community development is family. You understand? So when we look at the divisiveness that has happened individually, we each are individuations of the presence of this absolute and supreme intelligence. But we've been divided within ourselves to the degree to which we do not exalt a full effort in our living. We've not fully committed to living. We've committed to whatever our habits are. You understand, we are divided within ourselves. So it becomes next to impossible to have loving relationships, to have very productive relationships, even business relationships, work relationships. We have so many brothers who are so gifted. We have brothers who are trucking. How many Black owned trucking companies are there? You understand? So I'm just saying is that when you divide it within yourself, then it's difficult to have marriages that really stand the test of time. You have people who've been so connected, but they love each other to death. They support each other in everything. They drink, they smoke. Here, baby, have some more, have some more, have some more. Next thing you know, he's having to have his legs amputated. You understand? Because we're serving death. And this has been our program. And our children have not, and many of us have come from what psychology in University of Florida in the mid 70s called broken homes. You understand? But it's the program.
More common than a home with two parents. I tell you, for sure. Most of the men that I meet.
Right. Right. And so then there's the anger, there's the frustration, there's a sense of abandonment, there is the blame and the guilt put on the mother. There is, the fact that you didn't live with your mother because you were raised by your grandparents or you went into foster care. You understand there's so much that's locked into ourselves that the only way to liberate them is to do this protocol, to do this cleansing, to really care. Because see, you'll never do anything that you don't care to do. And the care has to be activated. You have to care to show up now. You have to care to not be a statistics in this. You have to care to walk in the light of the truth of your God self. You have to care to honor your lineages. You have to care to be completely responsive to the will of God, the light of God, the truth of God, the peace of God, the poise of God. You've got to care, because if you don't care, you will never do it.
Yeah.
You can go to church and you can know the scriptures and you can have gone through divinity school and gotten degreed and whatnot to preach and be a pastor and a minister, but you still feed off the flesh of dead animals. That is what the problem is, that we have not connected the dots between that which is liberation and that which is oppression. And we seem to, we think being oppressed is fine. It's like you happy to be out. And I'm looking at the generation of the teenagers now and the 20-some-year-olds who got on the real short skirts and the big heels and the breasts all out, and they still at the bars and they still this. And I'm saying we have not had any real support through any of your educational institutions to really address the foundation of our oppression and to really provide us the support in having leverage over a global initiative that is depopulation, zero population, and genocide.
Yeah. For me, in my interactions with people that aren't on this journey, it's really hard if people are looking at it from a perspective of, like you said, it's not just changing your diet and detoxing. The consciousness that comes along with it. I think you can't even scratch the surface of how important it is if you don't start on that journey of at least eating properly. because your consciousness is so bogged down with so much pollution in your body that you can't even get to that thought pattern. Like
exactly. And you've had so many of the metaphysicians, and this is my experience now. I've been teaching and going on for almost 50 years here. You understand? And what I find is that people will get started and then the consciousness opens up and then they start listening to Deepak Chopra or Abraham Hicks or, all of these other ones who are trying to monetize and, deal with prosperity ministry or whatever. But none of them talk about the food. None of them talk about food. And that's depressing. You understand? And I can, appreciate what so many of the realizations have been in terms of understanding how law is operable. All right. So law is an inherent part of existence. Perfection is an inherent part of existence. Justice is an inherent part of existence. All right. So by law, when you are in violation of the primary law that governs your being, there will be suffering. There will be pain. There will be sickness. There will be illness. There will be this disconnect from your being able to walk in the fullness of your own authenticity and authority as God's own. This is the trick. We're in violation of the primary law that governs us. But the law has to be enveloped. It has to be infused within us because we are created perfectly and divinely. And by law, we cannot feed violated beings and be all right. No matter how many degrees we have, no matter how well loved we are, no matter how many people know your name, no matter how many views at the box office your movies and whatever got. The bottom line is very few people are really understanding what the purpose in being on the planet actually is, particularly in taking responsibility for ensuring the progression, the continuation, the exaltation, and the evolutionary soul development of the lineages through whom you've come to represent our lineages in the kingdom of God, because that is the end game. You understand? These people got all these wars going on. They bombing and raping and pillaging. And you understand? I'm just saying, this is the best y'all got. This is the epitome and the apex of your capacity to think as a creative people. This is what you create. Mayhem and murder and all of this. And then when you want to be respected as intelligent people, I can't give you that. I can't give you that. I can't respect you as intelligent people when you are a detriment to yourself, to your lineages, and everybody else. And to think that you have, by virtue of having invested in so much of the death culture, and that you've got millions based upon your investments from the chicken, the beef, the oil, the sugar, and then all of the pharmaceuticals and the medical equipment. And you understand? So it's like investment, when you got more and more sick people. But your end game is death. There's no way that you could be the perpetuators, the sowers of the seeds of violation, sickness, illness, disease, and death, and not have a tragic date with death. But our being melanin dominated people are being influenced by death culture does not automatically give us leverage over it if we have been violated and been participating with it. And we work for these companies. You understand? So the ultimate objective is that in our care to be committed to that which has already proven itself to us, which is the source of all being. The sun is still blazing. The earth is still spinning. We are in an ocean of just cosmic consciousness. We are travelers in the cosmic. We're perfectly and divinely designed, and we are designed to be the personification of the entity that we refer to as God, Goddess, personified. We're here to create heaven on earth. We are here to walk the face of this earth in the beauty and the bounty and the abundance and the benevolence and the mercy and the gratitude and the thanksgiving of being so absolutely blessed with each and every breath and every beat of our heart. So that as a result of a well-lived life, a well-lived life in love, a well-lived life in the order of God, Goddess unfolding, we get a chance to get out of these bodies without having died and to move into the exalted spirit realms in the progression of evolutionary soul unfoldment as conscious immortals, destined to become someday true goddesses and gods. But we want to accept being niggas and thugs and hoes and employees of death culture. Really? Come on, y'all. We could do better. You understand? We have to do better. Do or die. Why don't you? But the issue is, you were given life. You'll never have a greater. You and we are here specifically for this. We've heard many have been called and a few have been chosen. And I'm saying even fewer choose. And I'm going to say that we've all been called and we've all been chosen, but few are truly choosing to accept the responsibility of repentance in clearing, cleansing, purifying, consecrating, and being fully committed to the laws that govern us, being fully committed to loving this absolute and supreme intelligence that is beating our hearts, breathing us as perfectly and divinely designed us, to be in a place and space where we are truly wrapped in its ever embracing arms in a full faith and confidence and knowing that whatever we ask for, it can be given. Whatever we can see with our imagination, we can create. That we are worthy and deserving. But we must do the inner work. We must consecrate. We must step out of this path of adulteration. See, that's the whole point of being fed like kids, is so that by 21 you're fully adulterated. You're adult. Adult is short for adulterated, no longer what the Creator intended. And so I'm saying that this is your consecration, your purification, your consistency over time in ritualizing your life to put God first, to put order first, to put the law first in your life, to be in a place and space where you do it consistently over time. So after 10, 20, 30, 40 years of consistency, you walk the face of this earth as one of the most astute disciples of truth and bearers of light to have lived. Why? Because each generation should become more dynamic than the previous one.
So how have you seen doing this work, things evolve with people? Do you feel like it's getting better or worse? You know, over the years, you started in the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like people are receiving the information? Are people more receptive? I know you're saying a lot of people aren't choosing, but over the years, how do you feel like the work has evolved?
Well, I think that when I came forward, veganism and vegetarian was not trending. And here we are 47 years later. And I would say, when loving God with your whole body, heart, mind, with all of your might and soul, and honoring the lineages through whom you've come, and loving each other like you love God, you understand, and advocating for the right of all beings to have the right to their lives, when that's trending, then know that we've gotten somewhere. Otherwise, we're dealing with the industrialization of food. Otherwise, it's a vegan form of the same garbage that we grew up eating. Otherwise, there's no initiative towards walking in the integrity of the divinity, the sanctity, and the sacredness of life itself. I can say that by my virtue of my being on radio for 25 years, that there have been so many who've listened over the years, but they've done nothing but continue to do. It's like it's entertainment. You understand the blockage and obstruction of and the addiction to the sugar and to the chemicals and to the flesh. It puts people in a position where it's like you just get old. You understand? Now, living in the realm of eternity, there should be no old. You understand? You're in the realm of eternity. How old is the sun? Oh, that old thing, she about to fall out the sky at any moment now. Not so. You understand? How old is the earth? You understand? So I'm just saying, no, you're in the realm of eternity. We are witnessing how life is consistently regenerating, rejuvenating, revitalizing. These people have been polluting the air, but then when you go outside, it's absolutely freaking amazing. It's beautiful. Why? Because the air is being cleared and purified through the rotation of the earth spinning in eternity. You understand? So I'm just saying is that the reality of it is this: the majority of the earth's population are youth.
Yeah.
Now, that's a blessing. The issue is those of us who care to really come into the light of ourselves have to take responsibility for leadership in light, leadership in love, so that these youth have the support, the cultivation, the encouragement in the divinity of themselves. But we must stand up and bring an end to the death industries. They can no longer be touted as multi-billion-dollar companies that have the right to poison everybody. Our exalting a full effort in our living will immediately create a boycott of the death industries. You understand? We don't have to go out and picket. We don't have to make a big noise about it. But we have to realize that no one has been given and sent to the earth to do anything than participate in the blessedness of being. There are no ones who are on mission by the intelligence of existence, or that which we refer to as God, to create sickness, illness, disease, and death as popular and common activity, collective learning and education, and the path of prosperity. That is the evidence of distortion and dysfunction as a result of the pollution and the poisoning of the bloodline. That their forefathers were in the progression of error. That there were those who were on a world conquering rampage, and that world conquering rampage has morphed into what we're seeing as the global initiative of depopulation and genocide. And I'm saying we cannot participate with it. We have to begin to see this as the only right action. It is political, it is economic, it is spiritual, it is cellular. It is the only way to regain our footing upon the path of everlasting life, and to understand that you're dealing with a people, or been dealt with by a people, who figured a way to rob the pharaoh's tombs. They've gone across the planet on their anthropological digs and whatnot. They're uncovering the artifacts of people who've come and gone, and they got it in the Vatican and in the museums throughout Europe and whatnot. But then they figured out a way to rob the temples of the living gods and goddesses of our wealth, our riches, our gold, our platinum, our ingenuity, our creativity, our faith, our confidence, our divinity, our sanctity, our sacredness. You understand?
Yes.
And so what we have left is the ones under the bridges. What we have left is the alcoholics and the drug addicts and the crack addicts and the prostitutes and the pimps and the whores and all of those ones who have been robbed of the divinity and the divinity, the truth, and the sanctity of themselves. And we have those who want to do something, who set up their 501c3s, who set up their ministries, who create shelters for the homeless, who create food initiatives for those ones who are without shelter. They create all of these things, but they never did the inner work to understand what the actual work actually is. And so we're putting Band-Aids on cancer. We're not restoring the integrity of the wealth of the people. And that's the work. But you cannot do for others that which you will not do for yourself. You cannot come into the place of realizing the will of God if you're not committed to God, if you're not committed to law, if you're not committed to love, if you're not committed to forgiving, if you're not forgiving and letting go and releasing the anger, the frustration, the pissation, the sense of abandonment, and you still every other word is just this and that and that. You understand? I mean, and you in the church and you got the scriptures, but the body is the temple where we meet God.
Yeah.
The body is the first home. And this is a conversation I was having in college after my dietary change in a psychology major. And the question was, what are the major contributing factors to one's success in life? Is it environment? Is it education? Is it genetics? Is it heredity? Is it affluence? What are the major factors? And I just raised my hand and I said, but you're not really exalting the reality that the body is the first environment, and that whatever is going on in here is going to affect everything else. All right. So when you look at the word being, BEING, being is the activity of existence. But the I that is in the center of the being is the intelligence of existence, which sees through every I. When we talk about realizing, the real I is truly seeing. But this is the clarification. This is what the purification, the consecration gives us, is that the real I, the intelligence of our being, has the opportunity to be activated, to come into the realization for the purpose of actualizing and harmonizing with the wheel of existence, the laws that govern our being, and coming to a point and place where we are aligned in truth with the divinity, the sanctity, and the sacredness of all life. And we will advocate for the right of all beings to have the right to their lives. And we will no longer feed upon the carcasses of other creatures and think that we have the right to be right when we're out of alignment with the laws that govern us. And nobody is spared from the violation. So we have more youth, more 30-some-year-olds who are dying of cancer, and the mothers are forcing them to do the chemo and the radiation. You understand? We have more youth who are now autistic, more youth who are delayed in their development because they were encouraged and influenced and thought that they had no other option other than to have their newborn babies on this series of vaccinations and inoculations and all of this. And I'm just saying is that we never had to be licensed, certified, and degree to be women. And to be woman is the evidence that we have been entrusted by virtue of the womb that is now being ripped from our bodies. Our breasts are being cut off. We are not fertile.
No, and it's so common.
We're
Yes, and I mean I have patients young, in their early 20s, doing these reassignment surgeries and sex changes because they're confused because their hormones are all out of whack. And they're cutting off their breasts and they're taking, testosterone injections and becoming male. And it's it's so common nowadays.
and we have to really understand that under so much of what I've seen over the years where it's a pro-African frequency, right? And the pro-African and pro-Black and this and that. So it's bashing homosexuality, it's bashing lesbianism, it's bashing all of this. And I'm saying, We are intelligences of existence. The intelligence of existence is male, female, both, and neither. So we're gonna have to cut through shit. We're gonna have to cut through all of that to really acknowledge the divinity of the being, regardless.
Yeah.
This is a major test for us. You understand? It's a major test because we are not realizing and taking responsibility for the impact and the effect of being in violation of the laws that govern our being, and literally feeding off the aborted fetuses and the milk and pus of other beings and their body parts and all of this, and then think that everything should be all right in our lives. No, it's not. It can't be. And how to come to a place in space where we are loving this absolute and supreme intelligence in the multiplicity of the diversity that we're seeing. You understand? Where you and we don't wear and should not be wearing our sexuality on our sleeves. And I'm saying, when you look at it, and I ask some of my elders and other ones, my contemporaries and whatnot, how much of your life has been spent in sexual activity? And I'm talking about actual getting it on. How much of your life has been spent in sexual activity?
Very small percentage of your life.
So why in the hell are you basing your whole life based on your sexuality or your sexual preference? That ain't nobody's freaking business.
Yeah.
The issue is, are you loving yourself? Are you loving your creator? Are you loving the law that governs your being with your whole body, heart, mind, with all of your might? Are you consciously caring to bring honor and glory to the lineages through whom you've come? Give thanks that you can find someone to be in love with, but most of it is not even love. We don't know love.
Yeah, and I definitely, I don't. It's such a complicated topic because I don't want anyone to feel as though I am saying that they're wrong or, they're a mistake in any way. But the reality of most of it is what I want people to understand, especially young people that they can't really conceive what is actually going on with them.
Right.
I don't want to make anyone feel as though they, are a mistake, or what they choose to do in their bedroom is my problem, because it's not.
Right. And a lot of the gender orientation starts with the brain. It's in the brain, in utero. So because we have not been supported in really knowing how the body works, we got it. We don't necessarily know how to deal with it. You understand? We don't know the formation. We don't know the stages of development. We don't know unless you've really studied it. And those who've studied it are still absolutely no help. When it comes down to how do we respond correctly and directly to ensuring that our children have been nourished, that they have seen and experienced what love is. How do we ensure that our elders are not in consistent decline? Because I've seen where ones have to come to a point where they take care of their parents, but then they will not give their parents anything other than the same beef, pork, chicken, and fish and whatnot that created the dementia, the Alzheimer's, and all of that. And I'm saying, at some point, we have to raise completely up so that God can use us, so that the light and the intelligence and the love that is God can speak and have its way in our lives, because that's what's required. Because everybody is of it. Everybody is in it. Everybody needs cleansing, and every spirit needs to be reminded and charged of the gift, the blessing, and the divinity of self. And the more we apply ourselves to understanding that this is not just about diet, it is about how do we ensure that we are participating with our liberation. So you ask me, what do I see? I see that people all over the world are caring to shake off so much of this. I'm seeing that we here, quiet as it may be kept, have to take leadership in it to influence the whole world. Because what we've seen in Africa and other places is, we have been colonized. You know, we are not, even though we might exalt Africa, but Africans in Nigeria refer to themselves as Nigerians. The ones in Ghana refer to themselves as Ghanaians. The ones in other parts, everybody is referring to themselves based upon the country or the tribe that they represent. And you may have an initiative called Pan-Africanism, you understand? But the issue is that I'm saying that we have duty, obligation, and responsibility to get beyond the tribalism, to get beyond all of the divisiveness, to realize the commonality that the intelligence of existence is the greatest and the least of us. It is the absolute reality that everybody is it. And our coming to a point, but see, this is why the divisiveness is there, because as a global humanity, if everybody was in the place where we acknowledge just the divinity, the sanctity, the sacredness, and the oneness of life, then all of this other stuff couldn't be going on. If we realize that what we do to our brothers is going to be done unto us, if we realize that we're brothers and sisters all over the planet, regardless of the slant of the eyes or the course of the hair or the lightness or the darkness of the skin, we are all brothers and sisters in life and intelligence, and we all have our gifts, skills, and abilities to be a blessing here. We are completely interdependent upon one another. And it's our time to be in a place where those of us here are moving forthrightly. Why? Because we work for these companies. We manage the global imaging for McDonald's and this one and that one. We go across the world wanting to set up and be Americans and American lifestyle in other countries. And I'm saying that life is not a lifestyle. Death is a lifestyle. Life is ordered. It is law. It is progressive. It is consistently renewing, rebirthing, re-expanding, redefining, refining itself. That's life. And we have so many ones who are rebuking. So when you go into other countries, they're not feeding their children all of this garbage that we have here. You understand? They're not, there's certain things that's been banned here that go over across the waters, but then there's so much that's across the waters that they won't allow America in there. You understand? I'm just saying, so there's a lot of conscientiousness that is rising amongst humanity. I even had a vision when I changed my diet at the age of 20, that all of the creatures were going to begin to literally fight for their lives. And so when people talk about shark attacks or the animals in the zoos attacking or whatever, and I'm saying, yeah, they have the right to. How many of them did you kill? How many of them did you rape and violate? How many of them have your heads on walls? You understand? And this is one of the reasons why I think Africa has suffered so much, is because it allowed for the safaris and the killing of so many of their majestic creatures, the elephants for their tusk and the rhinoceroses and all of this. You understand? It's like we forgot that all of life is sacred. And because the diet is flesh and flour, dead things and whatnot, it creates blockage and obstruction. and the neurons in the brain are being clogged, so you don't get that snap, crackle, and popping. You understand? And yes, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of ingenuity, the baskets that were weaved, and the beads and all of these things. But the issue is that you see the people and you see the distortion of their bodies. Have you seen? There's a brother who who has just made uh, so many viewers, and he just walks. They call him grandson, and I think he's originally from Uganda, and he's tall and he's
Okay.
built. He's he's all of that, and all he does is walk, and they
Okay.
just. He walks in all places. So he's been in the Philippines lately, and everybody's head just goes this way. Mouths are open, everybody goes this way. And sometimes somebody will jump on him and hug him, and all he does is walk, and he's black, and he's just sculpted, and and he just smiles, but all he does is walk without a shirt, and he'll have, very colorful pants on. And I'm just saying is that, but when you look at the contrast of his body and all of the other bodies,
Yeah.
we are full of doo caca.
Yeah. Mhm.
Everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world. There is no way that we can possibly stand up on behalf
Yeah.
of life as long as we are feeding off of dead things and all of this garbage, all of this rice, all of this starch, all of this cassava, all of this stuff. You understand? And to be in a place where you have no sanitation, to be in a place where you are not thinking from that
Mhm.
perspective, and why it is that we trying to get to Africa, but then Africa isn't trying to get here.
Yeah.
I'm saying wherever we are, we have to be mindful of dwelling in the presence of the absolute. Wherever we are, we have to begin to care to clear and cleanse our bodies because we're we're a mess.
So, what do you say to the people who are overwhelmed by the idea of transitioning to a plant-based diet, detoxification? Where should they begin?
You know, I have to really remind people, you know how you feel. You know how you feel, you know how you look. You know what your parents and what your family members are dealing with. You see and you've experienced what it is to lose people that you love, being chemoed and radiated, and kidney disease and all of this. And you eat the same way as these ones. What do you expect? What do you want with your life? What really matters to you if you don't? If you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. Nobody really cares. That's what we get. That's what we know. There was no tally of death before COVID, and I wrote an article for our health co-op here, March of 2020, with a view or the March on Washington. And so I put this picture of the March on Washington with all of these millions of people, right? And they're talking about how many people are now being diagnosed with COVID in different places and this and that, right? And then I went to the website of the American Health Association, and there they said that in 2016, there were 868,768 some odd people who died just from heart disease in the year 2016. And I'm saying, but y'all didn't call that a freaking pandemic.
Mhm.
Heart disease is the number one killer of all people. Why? Because the flesh of rotting pigs and cows and turkeys and chicken and alcohol and tobacco and whatnot, the dirtying of the blood, the defilement of the blood, the contamination of the blood, the pollution of the blood is going to disease the heart, period. But y'all not calling that a freaking pandemic.
Mhm.
Every disease becomes a multi-million dollar industry or institution under its own name. And we work for these people. And the only way you're going to come into a greater clarity of thought to do something else is to cleanse that blood. So what do? You take your first 15% of your paycheck, your salary or whatever, and you invest it in new blood. I haven't had a job since 1992. And since my college career, coming out of college in 79, my first job was as a fitness instructor. I did that 4 months. I did work for the Internal Revenue during tax season for 4 months. I did substitute teaching for 4 months. You understand? And then I started doing jewelry. I cut hair. You understand? But then I had a job working for a metaphysical book distributor, and I was with them for 5 years. And I worked that job like it was mine, like my company. But I was in my element. It was metaphysics. It was holistic health. It was all of the incense, the singing bowls, all of the chimes. It was, serving customers who have the occult bookstores, the health food stores and whatnot. So I'm taking orders and doing this. And I was with them for 5 years until the Rodney King decision. And the Rodney King decision just took me to a whole nother place. It took us all to another place because basically we had my midwife, Imelda Nuruddin, who worked. She provided vegetarian meals for the company. I was the 21st person hired. I'm the third child born the third day of the third month. The company itself vibrated to a 3. I was the 21st person hired. By the time I left 5 years later, it was 90 some people working there. All right. And so, but I left because you can't make this make sense for me anymore. Because when I sat with my brother friend, now the Rodney King decision made us close the doors, shut the phone lines down, and go to our lobby, to our recreational room or where we had our meetings, and just take time, because the media bombarded us with all of the footage of Rodney King being beaten and beaten and beaten, right? And then these guys are acquitted. And it just, and then right after that, one of my brother friends was found hanging at a Days Inn in Union City, a few miles from Atlanta. And I went and I sat with his body. And his mother was in California, so his body was on a gurney in the storage room for where the formaldehyde was. And his brother-in-law and another brother were doing a kind of a ritual of the body, and the blood and dirt and stuff was still in his locks. And I remembered that New Year, the coming of January and whatever, we were drumming and dancing and all of that. And in March, I called him and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. How are you?" He says, "I'm just sitting here waiting to die." And then I just kind of blanked out because I don't remember the rest of that conversation. But May 31st, around this time, I'm sitting with his body. And I just could not be the same after that. And that's only one brother. And they they thought it was suicide. And I knew that he said he was waiting to die. And so I went back to my office, full moon, took my shoes off, and I walked circles, praying, committing. And I sat at the feet of my supervisor. I was managing the advertising department, doing the advertising of the company, but I had a supervisor. And so I just told her I can't be business as usual. And so they gave me a leave of absence, gave me $1,400, and I got on the road. And I was gone longer than they anticipated. So by the time I got back a couple of months later, it's like, well, we're going to demote you and you got to go here. And I said, you can take this job. I don't have to have it. I told you all when you first hired me, I'd only worked a job for 4 months. I would commit to a year and I would be here till I cannot grow. That was 5 years. and I haven't had a job since. But what I do, right? And I was on the road for a couple of years, and then my mother passed, and then I opened up my custom adornment boutique and my restaurant. And when I closed that down after 5 years, and the money was good, the energy was good, right? And but I had to fast the day I closed the restaurant. And that fast lasted 72 days. And with that fast, I focused on how do I love you with my whole body, heart, mind, with all of my might. Let me live to honor and glorify the lineages through whom I've come. Let me no longer be a slave to people's appetites and desires. Let me become a voice on behalf of our liberation and our resurrection. I asked for that. That fast lasted 72 days. And that was June. And then I closed the business. Um, I had my 41st birthday, the 3rd of March, got my broadcast certificate with WRFG 89.3 FM on the 4th of March. I closed my restaurant and business. I had already closed the restaurant. I closed the boutique on the 5th of March. And from that point, anytime I generate money, the first thing I do is invest in new blood. I get my herbs, I get my clay, I get my water, I get my fruit, I get my fruit and vegetation. And so that's how we shift. Invest in yourself. Invest in yourselves. And people say, "Oh, well, are you looking for a good investment?" I say, "I'm investing in people. I'm investing in people. I'm investing in our resurrection. I'm investing in our liberation. I'm investing in the responsibility that we have to ensure that those that have come through us and those that have come after us, that they have access to their lives in the light of the supreme intelligence, that they are born to be the children of God." That's where my money goes. We need to understand the collective power that we have individually, collectively, at home, in our own body temples, in our own bathrooms, and in our own kitchens.
Yeah.
There's a power that we have available to us now. And if you ain't about some power right now, baby, you ain't gonna ever have none. And I don't really give a shit how much money you have. You understand?
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that like testimony. For me, working in the field that I work, it is a struggle. Like
Mhm.
I mean, I struggle with going to work every day and knowing that I don't believe in anything that they're doing.
Right.
And, I find myself talking to patients and wanting to just like give them a little something to help them because I know the medication that I'm giving them or, the IV drip that I'm hanging up is not necessarily helping them to get better. Of course,
Right.
there are certain parts of the emergency department that people need medication immediately, and it is helpful. There is a place for medicine, but for the most part, in maintaining health, we're not doing anything for these people for their health. I mean, we're just,
Right.
taking care of the symptoms, treating the symptoms, and, hoping they change their lifestyle without actually telling them to. But, it's it's been a journey for me and I would love to transition into doing things full time for people that I actually believe in, but you know the progress is being made with having you on the show, just sharing your journey, and I definitely appreciate you coming on tonight. It's been a complete pleasure, and I'm going to put all of your information back on the screen so people can follow you on social media platforms and reach out to you if they would like to get a hold of you, do some of your protocols, listen to your radio show. It's been a dynamic conversation. And I just want to know if there are any parting words that you want to have for the audience to, just encourage them to get on the path of health and not death.
I want you to realize that you have been gifted with life. You'll never have anything greater. There's nothing that can be added to you that is greater than you. There's no real job that you can have that is greater than you fulfilling destiny. There's no amount of money. You can put all of the money that has ever been printed, all of the coin that has ever been minted, put it all together. It does not have the value of one beat of our heart or one breath that we take. I want us to come to a point where we have the righteous indignation to come to a place and space where we're no nonsense, no compromise, no foolishness about walking in the authority and the authenticity of who and whose we are as these living, loving, intelligent, potent, immortal points of the presence of this absolute and supreme intelligence that is beginningless, endless, infinite, and eternal. Some refer to it as God. On behalf of the lineages through whom we've come, on behalf of all of those who did not come, who could not come, who didn't make it across the middle passage, on behalf of all of those who were hung and beaten and raped and sodomized, on behalf of the nations that have gone into extinction that were on this particular continent, on behalf of life itself, and on behalf of the billions of creatures whose life and whose environment has been robbed and distorted. Let us rise. Let us cleanse. Let us care to honor and to be the change that we want to see. You can't just complain about how stupid these people are and think that that is your salvation because you can criticize. We have no salvation except we repent and clear and cleanse and consecrate and create a bloodstream that is supercharged with the minerals of the earth and our wholehearted desire to be whole, body, heart, mind, spirit, and harmonize with our souls. Nobody can give you anything greater than yourself. And when you care to walk in the light of the truth, of the divinity, the sanctity, the sacredness, the awesomeness, the creativity, the ingenuity, the remarkableness, the miraculousness of who you are. We've all been saved from something. And give thanks that most of us have been saved from some degree from our parents. You understand? But to come under a system of oppression and to perpetuate it, work on its behalf, and think that there's some success in this life, do not be fooled. The only success is our regaining our footing upon the path of everlasting life and our raising completely up. Boycott the death industries by exalting full effort in your living, your loving, your forgiving, your honoring, your cherishing, your walking in the integrity of the ones that we are, having the cleanliness, the consecration, the purification, so that we, the evidence of the re-enthronement of the true spirits of the living God, Goddess, that is our absolute truth. And we are the emergence of the queendoms and kingdoms of God upon the planet. That really is the end game. There isn't anything that is guaranteed success. That is success guaranteed. Join me with that. I love you with a perfect love. Thank you for being the one that you are. I'm here to help.
Thank you. This has been such a blessing to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing the work. I prayed for nurses, and I've got quite a few nurses who are getting themselves together. The intention of that is to begin to set ourselves up for doing some holistic healing facilities and whatnot. We have the right to do whatever it is we have the light to do. If you don't have the light to do it, You don't have the courage, you don't have the faith, and you'll never do it. But once you determine that you have the right to your life and you have the right to live your life on behalf of that which is life itself, then you can accomplish anything you would love to do. But you cannot be a detriment to yourself and survive it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adama. You have a wonderful evening. Thank you
Thank
all for joining us. And this is Latasha, host of Kiss My Asparagus. Until next time, have a good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.